There we go. And all guests attending today are in listening only mode. We will be sending out the recording following the program, and we really encourage you to share it on social media with colleagues and neighbors to help raise awareness and to contribute to the resources that are in our community. We encourage and welcome you to use the chat to introduce yourself as the program starts, to share comments and thoughts with one another. And please use the question and answer feature located at the bottom of the screen to enter any questions you might have for the panel. We'll be saving those questions until the end. The foundation has a broad reach in the community. We make grants to nonprofits working to address social and environmental determinants. We inspire and facilitate philanthropy and its reach in Delaware County. We convene stakeholders around issues that matter, such as today, and we expand channels of community engagement. We also advance public health through our long-standing maternal health programs. Every day in Healthy Start, Nurse Family Partnership, WIC, the Center for Hispanic Resources, the Health Resource Center programs, we work with families who experience barriers in affording and accessing supplies to meet their basic needs. We know that in communities where public transportation is not strong, or where options for purchasing supplies are limited to corner stores or pharmacies, that individuals and families wind up spending more per item and experiencing shortages more frequently. Not being able to afford menstrual supplies isn't just a public health issue. It's also an education access issue, workforce development issue, a reproductive justice issue, and an advocacy opportunity with policy solutions, as you're going to hear about today from many of our speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass to Senator Tim Carney, who's going to get us started with our program. We're really looking forward to the program today, and we're so grateful to our panelists for joining us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to first thank everybody for being here, and thank particularly the Foundation for Delaware County for providing this platform so that we can have this conversation about period poverty. There's so much stigma surrounding openly talking about menstrual cycles and equity. And I hope that today's discussion helps to remove some of those stigmas so that we can move closer to a place of resolve concerning understanding the impact of period poverty. If we can do that, if we can start to look for ways to help those impacted by it. As a husband and father, I care deeply about women's health and want to be an advocate for those I serve. I'm also a proud member of the bicameral and bipartisan Women's Health Caucus in Harrisburg. So I recognize that people within my district are impacted by period poverty, and that's why Representative Curry and I decided to host a feminine hygiene products donation drive to support women, local women, and girls. Right now, until the end of the month, people can drop off items at one of my district offices, Representative Curry's Upper Darby office, or the Ridley, Lansdowne, or Springfield YMCAs. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this topic and other ways I can help be an advocate. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague in the House, State Representative Gina H. Curry.
Thank you, Senator Carney. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to be a part of this exciting partnership in collection of period poverty items for young women and people who are menstruating. It's very important that we continue to understand the importance of not having shame behind this, but it's something that we all need. And it's something that should be freely available to people who are menstruating and that they're not ashamed of it at all. And so it's so great that we are having this opportunity to have this discussion today. Period poverty is a worldwide issue that does not get talked about enough. Imagine missing out on daily life simply because you do not have the money to afford period supplies. This is common. This is a common reality for many women and menstruating people, especially those living in poverty. According to several studies, 1 in 4 women and menstruating people struggle to purchase period products. Not having period supplies means that they're unable to go to school. They miss days of work. This absence perpetrates a cycle of poverty that is the core of the public health issue known as period poverty. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by two amazing local advocates who are working to spread awareness about this women's health issue. Christine Joy Brunson, LSW, is a founder and president of the Delaware County nonprofit, the Purple House Project, PA, and Nakia Outland is the founder of Prevention Meets Fashion. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Would you like to just have a quick moment to introduce yourselves and let us know what you're doing in this fight to provide period justice for those around us?
Yes, I can start. Hi, everyone. I am Christine, and I work with women who are impacted by intimate partner violence. And one of our missions is to connect people to essential resources that aid in the healing process. And so for the past few years, we've partnered with Nakia and other organizations to do drives similar to your office and to make sure that we can make period products as easily accessible as possible. And so that's one of the ways that we've been getting involved, as well as like educating our community about like what period poverty is, what it looks like, and then different resources in the community that help in aiding this public health issue.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And Nakia?
Yes, hi. I'm so pleased to be here and thank you for inviting me. So again, my name is Nakia Outland. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the executive director of Prevention Meets Fashion. And for those of you who are not familiar with Prevention Meets Fashion, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in Philadelphia, but we're virtual. So we literally connect with folks in the surrounding areas and even outside of the US. We specialize in using a fashion-based approach that I created years ago. And through that, we use creativity, innovation to address the lack of sexual and reproductive health education and promote the unique needs of queer and Black communities. Our mission is to increase sexual health knowledge in those communities and people of color in general and non-binary communities through a model that we use, which is fashion advocacy, community, and education. As a social worker and as a majority of our staff are social workers and advocates, it is really important for us not to just talk about fashion and how it intersects with the issues that we're talking about today, but also what can we do about these issues, right? How can the community get involved? Because a lot of these issues, a lot of times we sit back and we read the research, but we really never involve the community or ask the community their needs. And out of that is where the education is needed. So I believe Senator Curry used the phrase today, and other menstruating human beings, and that is right. Oftentimes when this topic is spoke upon, it is spoke upon in the language, in binary language of women and girls. And there are menstruators out there that do not identify as women and girls. And if we're not using the proper language, we're leaving out those populations, right? We could do as much education, as many drives as we want to, but when we're going into these spaces, we're still neglecting other populations because we are using language women and girls, and especially if you do not identify as a woman or a girl.
Thank you very much. I think what both of you are doing is outstanding. Helping those who, as Nakia just said, may not identify under the auspice of what we necessarily think about when there's menstruation. And we also, I worked earlier on with another partner in my district who has a strong heart for this work, and that's Desiree Lamar Murphy, and she has a market. And we collected so many items, and we're still trying to figure out how we distribute those to the schools and really make this an impactful space as school ends. Still trying to figure out how we can send these young girls and menstruating students off for the summer, because we talk about folks not being able to go to school because of it, but in the summer, just like we talk about food disparities, and insecurities, when you have your period or there's menstruation happening, you might not be able to get things or these items throughout the summer. So those is definitely a space. Now I see Senator Cappelletti has joined us. Senator Cappelletti, if you're able, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you for all you're doing to combat this public health issue.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Curry. I am unable to be on camera at the moment, but I'm happy to be here. When I first joined the Senate, Senator Collette reached out to me asking if I would join her in co-sponsoring a bill for menstrual equity. It sounds like you all have heard about how important this issue is and how people often go to school and do so many other things because they don't have access to the products that they need to address menstruation and to do it in a healthy, clean manner. And what our bill would do is require that businesses and programs that receive state funding or are part of the state our business long-term care facilities, places that rehabilitation facilities, places where an individual might be that would be receiving tax state funding, are required to provide at no cost pads and tampons and other things to address any menstruating needs.
Wonderful. Thank you. We did miss a little bit of what you said. You were going in and out, but I think we caught the gist of what you have been doing to combat this. And we're also doing things in the House as well for the period poverty justice. And that's exactly what this is. It is about the justice nature of this, where it comes to women and menstruating people. And so we want to continue to work on this fight in every way that we can. So thank you, Senator Cappelletti, for your commitment and dedication to this work that impacts indeed so many people in our district, throughout the country, and throughout the world. Thank you very much. Back to our panelists. So I want to ask the two panelists here, how does period poverty affect the people that your organizations serve? I know you talked a little bit about that in your initial introduction, but I'm sure you have some examples how this is really impactful and how it can be real and transparent to those of us who are joining today to really understand the impact of what this means for so many.
Well, if Christine don't mind, I'll begin. So I'm sorry. So how it impacts our community at Prevention Meets Fashion is some of the things that was said already this afternoon, which is stigma, discrimination, safety. It's a safety issue, school and work issue, and also a poverty issue, but also how it impacts the communities that we work with, which again are Black people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, non-binary, sex workers, people who are disabled, people who have partners that fit any of those descriptors, but also it affects them in a way that, again, language and the way that menstrual health, menstrual education, period poverty is talked about is talked about in a very cis-normative way. And if you're not familiar with what cis-normative is the belief that sex and gender are binary, meaning just male and female. So when you do that in some of our populations, that can sometimes create what is called dysphoria for some folks, right? Which is this unbelievable frustration of not being able to what I want to say, not being able to basically have yourself aligned with who you know that you are. And any of us can actually have dysphoria, but is mainly in certain gender identities, mainly talked about in the trans community. So when we go out and talk about it, we try to talk about it in a gender neutral way, and that all folks are getting information, that we're hearing what folks are saying around menstruation and period poverty and how it's affecting them and their families. Recently, we just did a talk around queer periods for a group of youth. And we really enjoyed the talk because the entire audience was mainly male identified folks. And they asked really good questions. And, you know, when I told people that the folks that showed up was mainly male identified folks, they were like, well, why would they want to sit through that? And I'm like, well, some of the things that we found is that some of them have children. Some of them are single parents. They're taking care of menstruators. Some of them are in relationships with menstruators. Some of them were actually menstruators themselves that identify as men. So when we're talking about this issue, it's really important, again, that we're talking about it in a way that we're trying to impact every community. Now, we know that cisgender or folks who have uteruses menstruate, and that's the population that some of these bills and language is geared towards. But again, what we do uniquely at Prevention Based Fashion is dissect that a little bit more and really make it be comprehensive education for everyone, because you never know who may come to you and need to have that education around menstruation. We also talk about it from not only just when you are menstruating, but from the beginning. So from menarche all the way to menopause, right? Because we have some folks that are taking care of their grandkids, and they're, you know, they went through menopause already, and they, you know, things change, we evolve, and what products they may have used and been introduced to, or how they were even introduced to their cycles could be really stigmatizing. And, you know, they might not have had the education. And what we found at PMF is a lot of people, the way they were introduced to period products was, you know, oh, I see blood somewhere. Here's a pad. Here's a tampon. But they never took the time to say it's different sizes. It is different. How do you put this on? And before I pass it to Christine, my last story is I remember working with a group of girls who were sexually abused, and one girl, she had an odor, and the other kids would just tease her. And one day I came in early and I pulled her to the side, and you know, I said, what is the issue? And I'm a social worker, so I said, what is going on? And so she said, I got my cycle, but it really hurts. And so I said, well, explain to me what's going on. And after we dissected everything, of course, it was some hygiene issues because she had been in foster care for since birth. And so what we found was that she actually was wearing the pad upside down. So she did not know. So we had to start all over again. And so we can't take those little things lightly when we're talking about handing out products. Like, we can hand out products all day, but we have to have that education, you know, or at least offer the education. Do you know how to use these products? Do you know that there are products that are eco-friendly now, reusable products? Think about the population that you're working with, and talk about these products in that way. So thank you.
Nakia, I can so appreciate the transparency of your responses, because I think so many people don't understand those, I call them little nuances or complications that come about when we are menstruating women, menstruating people. We come about so many different confused pieces because the education is different across the board with whoever you are being raised by. Sometimes there are families who don't talk about it. You have to figure it out on your own. I know when we were younger, the talk of tampons before you were a grown woman was absolutely unheard of, unless you were an athlete. And so these are things that you're absolutely right. We have these drives, but where's the education in it? We just can't leave people with the products if they don't know how to use them. Very good. Thank you so much. Christine.
Yes, so we work with women who are impacted by intimate partner violence. And so period poverty impacts our ladies specifically with financial abuse. More often than not, financial abuse is one of the most popular abuses that is not talked about often. Like oftentimes when people think about intimate partner violence and domestic violence, they think about the physical and sometimes the mental, but they don't really think about the financial. And so oftentimes financial looks like their partner controlling all of their finances and only giving them a certain allotted amount of money in order to spend. And, with that being said, menstrual products are super expensive. And so if a person has to choose between, hey, am I going to use this money to purchase some food for myself, or am I going to use this money to have menstrual products? And so that often is one of the ways that it impacts the people that we serve. And then also when people finally decide to leave a domestic violence situation, there's all kinds of financial costs that are absorbed at that moment. And menstrual products, there is something that is like an ongoing process. And so if you think about it, someone who was completely financially dependent on their partner or in the relationship and they decide to leave, and yes, they finally get connected to state benefits, but there's no state benefits that cover menstrual products, right? And so the state benefits cover like food access and they'll cover doctor's appointments, but they don't cover something that happens to a menstruator every single month. And so our work is a lot of times just like providing that resource. And then we often hire Nakia to do the education piece of it as well, because there are different avenues. And so like we, a couple of years ago, partnered with the local women's shelter, and we talked about period poverty, its implications, the advocacy part of it, encouraging people to use their voice and like to sign on to bills like the one you all mentioned earlier on, and to like do letter writing campaigns, and to also like gain knowledge about different menstrual products, because like every menstrual product isn't for everyone. So like some people like disposable products and like pads and tampons, and then other people, period underwear or diva cups or flex might be better for them because they are transient. And so our organization tries to help educate and provide resources when we can.
Great. Thank you, Christine. I think I really like the fact that I heard that the Purple House Project and Prevention Meets Fashion are partners. Sounds like you all are have allyship in this work. So that is really good to hear. The next question that I have for you is, what do you think can be done to combat this public health issue? What do you think can be done to combat this public health issue? And we'll start with you, Christine.
I think making it accessible. So I had my intern do a quick search for me a few days ago about where to get menstrual products for free. And she was like, Christine, I can't really find anything. And my 9 to 5, I work at a social service agency working with people who live with like HIV and AIDS. And there's condoms on every single table in our office. You know what I mean? But if we had someone who needed to come here for menstrual products, which a good majority of our clients do need menstrual products, it's not as easily accessible. And so I would say simply like make it as accessible as condoms are. I would say allowing people to use their access card to purchase these kinds of menstrual products. I think those are two really easy fixes to, combat this situation. I think also just, the education piece as well. But I think access is so important. Like everywhere that we're giving out a social service, I think that it should be a holistic approach. And like, if we're giving you food, we're also giving you menstrual products. If we're giving you condoms, we're also giving you menstrual products. So I think that it should be readily available.
Right, because if you really think about it, how often do people feel comfortable enough to say, oh, you know what, I need pads or I need tampons or any of the reusable types of products for menstruation? Often, right, like, we've gotten really clear about, oh, people need birth control, like you said, or people need food, or people need different things. But is it that clear that you can come and ask for products for menstruation, and who gives it out? Like, you know what I'm saying? So those are really important things that we need to begin to have these conversations more and more so that people feel comfortable. Hey, we're going to do these drives, but guess what? They're in my office. So if you come to my office, I have them in the bathroom, but I also have things that you may need in all of the areas that we serve, where we serve people in the community.
Yeah. I think the last part I would say is like making sure it's comprehensive. So a few weeks ago, I had a client come in and they needed menstrual products. In addition to menstrual products, we know that underwear go hand in hand. And so oftentimes there'll be like pads and tampons, but there won't be underwear. And so like, especially for our transient population, they need the whole package. Like they need the underwear, they need, you know what I mean? Like how many times have us as administrators had an accident or, you know what I mean? Like we have the luxury of like, oh, hey, let me just go change. But some of our clients don't have that luxury. And I noticed when they like talk to us about menstrual products, they'll like whisper and he's like, Christine, can I have, you know what I mean? But like when they're asking me for like SEPTA passes or like food vouchers, it's like out, you know what I mean? But like when it's something that's natural, you know, as menstruating, you know, it's the dignity part of it. Like they don't have, like if they don't have what they need, it's going to be really difficult for them to like, you know, move around, you know, in society.
Right. You talk about panties or underwear, then let's talk about clothing, because we know that accidents happen. Once it hits the underwear, it's going to hit the clothing. And so these are areas where we have to be prepared if we really want to help. Nakia.
Yes, and absolutely. So that was a good segue into another. It was a good segue into also what Christine and I do. So oftentimes, if Christine has products and we ran out of products, we'll combine and do like products and clothing, and underwear and stuff like that. So that was a good segue. But I second Christine in saying again, education, right? Especially comprehensive sex education, because that's where you're going to be talking about anatomy, who is a menstruator, when does menstruation start, what to look out for, odor, color, all of these things. Again, understanding language, right? So trying not to use words like sanitary or feminine products, which sometimes again is an outliner for folks not to even come to you, especially if they don't identify with those things. And a lot of times sanitary is stigmatized as clean and unclean. Understanding that period poverty, as Christine said, is a dignity issue, right? But it's also a reproductive and sexual health issue. So as a sex therapist and sex educator, what I also do when I talk about menstruation is also talk up to those who are sexually active. How is it interfering with their sexual health, right? Are they having any itching or pain in their vulva when they're menstruating? And that could be a segue too into hygiene, right? Are you properly wiping down, or do you have access to water or access to multiple times you might have to change, because oftentimes you can get irritation in your vulva if you are not cleaning or changing your products. Or even if you have a young menstruator who don't know that, hey, you're supposed to change your pad every 2 to 4 hours, right? And they're keeping it on all day, right? That breeds bacteria for yeast infections. And so we really do that education. It is also a mental health issue. It is an economic issue. It is a gender justice issue, as we said throughout this evening, because it's not just a woman's health issue, right? Menstruators are various gender identities. Also, we educate about degendering menstruation, right? And normalizing menstruation. But also, as Christine said, access to resources, right? So period products are being distributed. However, the inconsistency with education and how to use the products is lacking, and what bodies are able and not able to use certain products. And that goes beyond gender identity. That goes into the realm again of people who are disabled. Christine and I partnered, I think it was 2 years ago now, during menstrual health or / hygiene day, which is May 28th. And we did a virtual education on disabilities and menstruation, because Christine and I both have disabilities. And we talked about how disabilities that are not seen, like depression, can have an effect on menstruation, right? You might not feel like washing, you might not feel like changing your products. You might just want a free bleed, right? But people don't know that free bleeding is an option, right? And people may look at that as a hygienic issue, like you're just not going to catch your menses. We talked about how, and Christine, you can nod if it's okay to give the story about how I introduced you to period underwear. So thank you. So I introduced Christina Period Underwear years ago when I was asked to be an ambassador for one of the underwear companies as a queer administrator, but also I talked about how a lot of my friends have disabilities and how going into the store to ask for products, a lot of the times the store associates, they point. And if you have a visual disability, like you know, that's hard for them. So actually being able to go into the aisle. So Christine and I talked about it and I introduced her to the period underwear. And now like she's able to effectively monitor her cycle and not know with the pad, like, am I leaking through or am I not, like all of these nuances of being an administrator with a disability, and then respond and understand cultural taboos, right? So we're here. I'm here in Philadelphia, and I'm pretty sure in Delaware County as well. Like we have folks that are migrating into our areas, right? And with that, they bring their traditions, they bring their families, they bring their cultures. So a lot of these cultures, the way that administrators are treated is very harshly. And it's not just by men, it's by the women that may tell you, don't be around your husband when you're menstruating. Don't cook my food. Like all of these things, you don't use these products. They're telling their young menstruators, if you use a tampon, you'll no longer be a virgin, which we know that virginity is a social construct. We created that, right? For this purity look, right? But yes, it's all these nuances. I can go on and on. As you can see, me and Christina are very passionate about this.
No, that's wonderful.
But yes, education, rounding it out is really key. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, so Nakia and Christine, I think I've learned a lot from a lot of the terms and definitions. Free bleed, I don't think I've ever heard of that, and I'm well mature now and have been a menstruator for many years. I've never heard of free bleed. So, these things are new, especially when we think about generations. I know you talked about different cultures, but generationally, I know my grandmother, they didn't talk about it. My mother's generation, they had to figure it out, and then they were getting a little bit more open with me. I know the author, that Judy Blume, who wrote the book Hi God, It's Me, Margaret. That's how we learned about it. And then you had the American Girl dolls who decided to put out a whole series, and Girl Scouts got a little bit more comfortable and began educating. But again, when you talk about having the non-binary and the conversations around menstruating people, that's again a newer conversation for many of us in what you call, Christine, a very natural, normal bodily function, but has been shamed often and been kept quiet and kept secretive at best. And so even when I think about schools, and that's where Desiree Lamar Murphy and myself have talked so candidly about how we go into the schools. There are closets at some schools where we have contributed to the William Penn School District and Upper Darby here in my district, but they're closets. So you still have to go to the nurse's office, to the closet to get permission to get what you need. And these are all things that oftentimes create barriers for young menstruators, particularly young menstruators that are not identifying as female. And so these are all issues in combating what we called a public health issue, and not a public health issue that it's menstruation, a public health issue that all those things that I just said have come into play. What you said, Nakia, about depression, having a visual disability, like these aren't things that the everyday menstruator thinks about, and certainly not the people who are non-menstruators or people who have finished with that. They're just done, right? And so the next question that I have is, how do you think the community can help? How do you think the community can help? I mean, we're doing these drives. I think it's something, I know that There's a sister over in Philadelphia that's doing great work. And these are things that we are just hearing about. But how do we communicate about this regularly and get the community involved? I mean, we have these organizations. Of course, we have government that is starting to pay attention. We have just our regular community organizations. And even when we have our festivals and community days, how important it is for these this type of education to move forward. But coming from the two of you, the experts in this area, how do you think the community can better get involved with this?
Yeah. Before we answer those questions, if you don't mind, I'm very intentional with naming people, especially when they're Black women who have really started something that's monumental. So I do want to name that is Lynette Medley and her daughter.
Yes.
There are two Black women that have started the, I believe it's the Stop, which is they have a menstrual van now, and they also have a building where you can get free products, menstrual products, and education here in Philadelphia. So I do want to be intentional of naming her and all her work, and that her and her daughter has done as two Black women. Like, I've seen them grow from the ground up. So I do want to be intentional and give them their flowers now, because they are doing it.
Yeah, thank you. I know that she just celebrated her 1 year a little bit earlier in the year, I believe, and they're doing some incredible work in the Philadelphia area. So thank you so much.
Yes.
So
yes.
How else do you think the community can help?
Well, definitely collaboration. I can't say that enough. Christine and we collaborate, we bring people in. Our organizations are still small. We're run by women of color, which we don't necessarily get the funding to do a lot of marketing. We don't get the funding to do a lot of, so people see our faces and know that we are doing these things. So definitely that. Evaluate the work that you do at your organization. How are you incorporating period poverty into your organization? Research, education, advocacy. Are we intentionally leaving certain populations out of the conversation? Are we intentional about leaving certain populations out of fear of not receiving funding, lack of education, or education about other administrators? Perpetuating the menstruation as a cisnormative issue. Are we paying attention to our depictions of menstruation administrators, right? And also thinking beyond this as a surface level, right? Again, many of us look at this as a solvable problem, but are we thinking about it from a Western lens, right? Many folks, like I said earlier, migrate here, right? We bring our traditions, we bring these dangerous messaging around menstruation and period poverty issues. And again, collaboration over competition, right? Again, Christine and I have talked, we've called each other, we've posted, we've made donations to each other organizations, we've shared resources. I can't think of a time really where we talked about periods that I wasn't there and Christine wasn't there. Even if it wasn't each other event, we supported each other and we got the information out like, hey, if you're going through DV and IPV, I'm sending you to Christine. I know you came to us for clothing and menstruation issues, but let's go to her and we can work together as organizations to as a holistic viewpoint. So that's what I think the community could do, like be community, not just talk about it. Like, I'm really vocal about folks talking about being community, but really not being community.
Absolutely.
And I think we are an example, Christine and I, in our organizations of actually being community.
I love it. I love it. And I do love the whole part about collaboration over competition. That's a wonderful message for today. We're all collaborating and it's not to be a competitive thing because that doesn't help anybody. We want to be able to collaborate and get the needs of others met. And so collaboration over competition. I love it, Nakia. How about you, Christine?
I would say a community just providing access. So I know in my home and my bathroom downstairs, like I just have menstrual products just sitting there, like just normalizing, just having it accessible, like whether it be in your home or your office spaces, just having it out there so people can take it freely. I think that like that's what we can do as a community. And just like what Nakia said, just making sure you collaborate, because like period poverty doesn't happen in a vacuum. Domestic violence doesn't happen in a vacuum. And there's so many different touch points where you can, speak about period poverty. So you can speak about it when a client is going to a food bank or when at a medical visit, but also when they're needing access to transportation or mental health services, because all of those intersections impact period poverty. And so I think just just identifying the different intersections of people and providing a resource at each intersection, because there's different touch points. I know for us, we're super non-traditional in the way we provide services. I have gotten clients off of a Facebook moms group because a mom wrote on Facebook like, hey, I need this resource. And then I'm like, okay, DM me, because I feel like the era that we in, more often than not, clients aren't just going up to social service agencies and asking for resources, but they're posting about it on Facebook. They're posting about it on Instagram. And so like, as organizations, as communities, I think we need to like meet where our clients are. Like I would say, like, I would love to like just go to a hair salon, you know what I mean? And just like talk about it and like, y'all, look, let me just leave some extra products here for y'all, you know what I mean? Or go to a barbershop or, all the things. And so just being, making sure we're meeting people where they are.
Yeah, it's so important that, what I got from what you said is, accessibility. Accessibility is key when we're talking about menstruation and being able to just be open. There's nothing worse than being stuck. I'm sure all of us have had those experiences when we're stuck maybe in a restroom and there's nothing around. And we're feeling like we can't even walk out of the restroom because we're in a position where it's very uncomfortable and we're in a public place. And so accessibility is tremendous when we talk about how the community can be involved. When we talk about schools, I've brought schools up many times. I think that there needs to be policy put in place, not only for the girls' bathroom, the boys' bathroom, nurse accessibility, healthcare accessibility right in the schools, because we know if we're talking about food insecurities with children, we're absolutely talking about poverty, or not even poverty. I would just say period insecurity, because when we talk about poverty again, it really puts people in a position, well, you know what? That doesn't apply to me because I can get these products, but I can't get to them right now. So it really is about the accessibility. When we put poverty in front of these types of social issues, it oftentimes alienates folks as well who might say, well, I am in the position to purchase these things, I just can't get them right now. And I think we don't often think about that's something that puts, it alienates and it puts folks in a position where they're feeling like I can't ask for it because I know I get a paycheck, and this is for people who, can't get it at all. And so these are the things that, of course, we just have to change the language, period. So, collaboration, research. I love the fact of evaluating what the community is doing or what the program is doing, perpetuating how we actually educate and put this information forward, the messaging, and really how we depict about what this looks like. So with all that being said, and as we really finish out our conversation today, which has been super informative and wonderful for me, how my outlook is going to be on combating this public health issue in the future. What kind of legislation, Senator Carney and I and Senator Capoletti was on the line earlier, we're in the House and in the Senate, and we're looking to figure out, I know we have legislation that's in both areas right now. But what kind of legislation? I think I already brought up what I kind of want to look at for schools, places of education, but what kind of legislation do you think would continue to help your particular organizations move forward to getting this work done? And as a whole, where you see this particular social justice issue come to light?
Well, for us here at Prevention Meets Fashion, and I don't think I really said this out loud of the of our organization is we want to try to write some language in a bill around, and I want to thank you, Representative Curry, for talking about the difference between poverty and insecurity. So here at Prevention Meets Fashion, we do that, and we make it very intentional around clothing poverty and clothing insecurity. So we wanted to try to write some type of language or bill around that that's addressing clothing poverty and clothing insecurity, because it's no funding for us. And a lot of our programs, and our most popular program here at Prevention Meets Fashion, I would say, is our affirming fashion program. We always have folks come in needing clothing, whether it's what we said on this call, like, I have a bunch of administrators in my house and I'm going through clothes and I can't properly wash them. So do you have anything that they could just wear? And we're getting donations in, and we're really intentional. We just started a program called the PMF Fund, where if we can't get these resources, what we do is give folks gift cards to go and purchase the clothes. And we actually show them how to purchase clothes intentionally, right? For the longevity, not just thinking about purchasing the clothing larger so the kids can fit in them or you can fit in them, because that creates an environmental justice issue as well. But understanding that clothing poverty, clothing insecurity is also a period poverty issue as well. We can, again, we said it on this call, we can hand out the products, but if they don't have proper underwear or under things to keep it gender neutral to wear the product, then that creates an issue. Again, with our community, a lot of folks don't like to wear traditional panties because, again, it's gendered, right? It creates that discomfort, that dysphoria. So it's a little more expensive to go and find boxers that you can insert pads into. There are organizations like that, but they start at $40. And we might only be able to purchase one pair for someone that's an administrator that can't afford it. But other than that, what do? Do they risk going through 7 days of dysphoria because they have to wear traditional underwear? So we would love to see some type of bill and be involved in some type of bill around that, and look at it in an innovative way versus just head-on reproductive or sexual health or period poverty. Also, what was talked about earlier is the Menstrual Equity Act, right? And also the Comprehensive Sex Education Bill. Here in PA, it is still being stalled because of certain languages and stuff. And being comprehensive is medically accurate. It is developmentally accurate. And these are all the things that we talk about. The Comprehensive Sex Education Bill is not going to teach your child how to have sex. It's going to give your child the education and the tools to be a healthy, productive sexual being. And I think that's important. And I think that's all wrapped up again with education. And again, Senator Kerry, I am at all when you said about the bathrooms, right? Having at least one gender neutral bathroom with products in it that people could go in and don't feel that that anxiety of having to go to a nurse or ask someone, right? I know it's even an issue of having to go to the nurse to ask for condoms. And I've heard stories from folks that, hey, I don't want to go to the nurse's office because they said, you back again? But they don't understand that it might be that one child going for everybody.
Yeah. That's a true statement.
One bold child that's going for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's not just at the elementary level, it's at high school levels, at college level. I teach relationship and sexuality in college, and so many of my students are like, I didn't know menstruation is a whole cycle. I'm like, yes, it's 4 parts to it. For 28 days, your body is preparing itself over and over and over, and it's 4 phases. It's not just you bleed, it's a lot more to your body and what your uterus does, and understanding your cervix and your uterus and ovaries. It's a whole bunch of things. So I would love to see particularly how it affects Prevention Meets Fashion is how can we come in as innovative around something around clothing and providing clothes for folks, because we can get the products. People will donate products. Diva Cup has donated to us, Tampax, all of these organizations will donate to you. But we rarely, and Christine and I both had this issue where we had to actually share packs of underwear because people are like, I need underwear.
Right.
you know,
Underwear is, mhm.
yes, one pack of underwear is $10. So imagine that on a family of 5 people or 3 people.
Right,
It's a
right.
lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Nakia.
Thank you.
Christine.
I would say if there was anything I would add, I would just say making sure that if there could be a piece of legislation that would say that people could use their access card to purchase menstrual
Mm,
products, I think that would be life-changing for so many people. And I think you all mentioned earlier in the conversation that like any organization that receives state funding would have to provide menstrual products. I think that would be phenomenal as well, that it would be like very accessible.
wow, I keep looking down because I'm writing so many notes, because you two ladies have done an amazing job of keeping us educated here on this webinar. I think today we've learned so many key parts about the importance of this work and how we continue it, how we continue with understanding the language, the actual roots of why some of these things go on culturally and how we're really looking at it every day. There's so many different spaces. And I know that it's been looked at, by the state of Pennsylvania, by different lawmakers. I'm co-sponsored on one by Rep Otten, called Menstrual Hygiene Products in Schools. But again, the language that are in these bills, around being cisgendered and non-binary, we have to be able to look at those spaces too, because so many menstruating people do not identify as the female or the gender that we would assume is menstruating. So I appreciate each of you tremendously for agreeing to come on to talk with us today. I see Senator Carney. Would you like to have some closing remarks, Senator?
Yes, I would actually, particularly as the old white guy on the call. It's funny, it brought back a memory for me of the first time my wife asked me to pick up tampons at the CVS, and it took me a good 10 minutes to sort of, get up the nerve to like buy an item in a store. I mean, that's the kind of thing, socialization that we're fighting against, people that we understand as our particular roles. I just really wanted to thank you ladies very much for all. That was a wonderful presentation, and I agree that we all need to be extra careful with our language as anytime we try to describe or talk about these issues. I'd also like to thank again, the Foundation for Delaware County for helping pull this thing all together. And to remind everybody not to forget that Representative Curry and I will still be accepting donations for our feminine hygiene products donation drive until the end of the month. So it's
Yes, thank you, Senator Carney. I think there was one question that came up. Katie, I don't know if you want to take that question since you had started it out. And I really want to thank Senator Carney's office. Everybody in Senator Carney's office did a fantastic job. Tyra, in particular, she was on it with our office and getting me prepared to lead this today. And I just really appreciate the coordination. So thank you. Katie?
I also appreciate all the coordination. Tyra's a wonderful partner for these webinars. And I think we all are looking forward to partnering again in the future. So we have a question in the chat, which is from Kamaya Jackson, just asking how can we join in on these efforts? And so I think State Rep Gina Curry and Senator Carney talked a little bit about the drive that's going on, but Christine and Nakia, I did put your websites in the chat box so people have them, but can you let people know just how they can get involved and how they can connect with you both?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in contact with us is through our website. Either, you might get a call surprisingly from myself or from our interns or another staff member. You can also on Instagram, as Christine said, we're really accessible, and we do check our DMs to make it more accessible, especially for younger folks. And again, this Saturday, we're actually partnering with a young art collective to actually hand out period products during their art event in Philadelphia. But if you want to donate, we do take donations of clothing and menstrual products. We recently had an influx of kids who are transitioning who needs these products. So think kids under 12. And it's really expensive for parents to redo a whole new wardrobe for a different gender. So we definitely do need children clothing. So please definitely get in contact with us. Our information is on our website. Thank you, Katie, for putting that in the chat. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just echoing same. Oh, you can get in contact with us through our website and our social media handles. We have a couple community events coming up, one on June 4th in Philadelphia, where we'll be partnering with Councilmember Kendra Brooks around gun violence and restoring the city. And then we'll be like doing some advocacy work in Harrisburg. So if you just follow us on social media or on our website to just stay abreast about like all the stuff we have going on. We have a wish list there as well. We have a community garden because we believe in like holistic healing as well. And so just if you stay tuned, and thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate this opportunity to share.
And as I mentioned, when we kicked off the webinar, we will be recording this. And so I'll be sending it out to our registrant list. I think another way that you can help is by sharing this with your colleagues, your neighbors, your friends, your community organizations, because this really is about shining a light, right, on a public health need and making sure that as we are doing more work around period poverty, that we're also using the right language and that we are being inclusive and that we are really reaching all of the people who may need these resources. So I want to thank everybody so much for coming today. We're really grateful to have you here. There's some nice comments in the chat if you haven't checked them out on your way. And we will see you all next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Curry and Senator Carney, thank you as well.
Yes, have a wonderful day and have a good holiday.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.